So my name is Nina Stangland. I'm the Managing Director of NC Seafood Innovation. And together with A and three brilliant speakers today, we're gonna bring you a lot of good thoughts and hope to facilitate some new ideas between blue and green innovation. So the speakers today I will represent for you. We have Margaret Øverland, professor at NMBU and center leader of CRI Foods of Norway. She's going to start out today by talking about blue and green novel feed based on wood and seaweed. And next up will be Carl Almås. He is also going to talk to us today about increased export values from Norwegian bio-based value chains. He is a special advisor at Sintef Ocean. And last one up today is Kjartan Kramer. He is senior advisor and leader at the Yeast Innovation Center. He's going to tell us about the new feed ingredients, the possibilities within the ocean. And I also want to introduce EA that is going to facilitate this seminar with us. So I'm going to send the word, pass it down to Margrethe Øverland today. We are happy to hear your presentation today. Yes, thank you.
So good afternoon, and thank you for this invitation. And here is how Foods of Norway work across the blue and green sector to meet the demand for foods and feed. And Foods of Norway is a center for research-based innovation, joining research and industry. The center includes aquaculture, agriculture, and forestry. And our research is all about increasing food production in Norway while minimizing environmental impact. And we are using, and especially we're working on developing local feeds so we are less dependent on imports. And we are using trees and seaweed, which are abundant resources to develop these local feeds. And we are working with Atlantic salmon, but also to traditional farm animals like pigs, poultry, and dairy cows. And we have already made some major achievements in the center. And I will give you now 3 examples how these sectors can cooperate. And the center, Foods of Norway, we have with us 19 industry and innovation partners from both the blue and green sector. And as academic players, they are important drivers for innovation. And the center has expertise along the whole value chain, all the way from biomass production to the final meat and fish products. This way, we are combining expertise in academia and industry, and also with political support from the NGOs in the center. And and if we are successful, these academic partners will then have a competitive advantage. So the first example is how we use trees for novel feeds for salmon, making aquaculture a new foundation for the forestry sector. And in fact, the forest is one of our very most important biomass. Nearly half of our country is covered with trees, and this offers large opportunities for value creation. And the key to unlocking these resources is the technology to convert them into high-quality microbial ingredients such as yeast. And here you can see the process. Forest byproducts are cut into wood chips. The next step involves splitting the tree fibers into lignin, cellulose, and hemicellulose. And then we are using our own enzyme technology to convert the cellulose into sugars. These sugars are then put into a fermenter together with ammonia, nitrogen, and other nutrients that are derived from fish and poultry byproducts. And then we add special type of yeast into this fermenter that grows well in this media. The yeast is then harvested and processed into high quality microbial ingredients that we then use in feeds for salmon and other livestock animals. And here you can see the laboratory, the Bio-Refinery laboratory at our university, where we produce the yeast from spruce trees on the small scale level. And this is also part of the national infrastructure called NordBioLab. And there are two important things. The first one is to find the right combination of the sugar and these nutrients that yeast can grow on. And the second thing is to find the type of yeast that grow well in this media. And we do start our fermentation in small bioreactors, and then we scale up gradually. And then the next step is then commercial scale production. As I mentioned, the collaboration with industry is very important. And with us in Foods of Norway, we have Borregaard, which has one of the world's most advanced biorefinery, and they're located just south of campus. And there they have access to much larger fermenters than we do. And this gives us very important information on how yeast produced from spruce trees function under larger scale condition. And it also gives us enough yeast to perform field trials with both fish and pigs, for instance. But if we have to, or if we need to scale up even further, we're also working with Lallemand, which is one of the world's largest yeast producers. The second example is how we make feed from seaweed. And in Norway, we have a long coastline with access to large amounts of cold and clean waters. And this offers large opportunities to cultivate seaweed. And seaweed cultivation is becoming increasingly popular in Norway. And this is a unique biomass. And the seaweed only needs two input factors to grow, namely seawater and sunlight. And it has a positive environmental impact in that it binds and recycles nutrients from aquaculture sites, and it also binds CO2 in the ocean. And it can be used for a wide range of different products, including feed, as you can see here. And in Norway, we're mostly cultivating the brown seaweed species. And in this country, we have a long tradition in using seaweed as a feed resource. But the nutritional value is limited because of the high ash content and the high content of complex carbohydrates, which has a low digestibility. So if we're going to use the seaweed in modern feeds, we need to think differently. And now access to new biotechnology opens up many possibilities. And in order to promote a seaweed-based industry in Norway, we need to process the biomass in a cost-efficient way through a holistic cascading biorefinery approach where we use the entire biomass. And in Foods of Norway, we are using this biomass as a feedstock to produce microbial ingredients. And this involves enzymatic assisted hydrolysis of the biomass to sugars and other nutrients. And this we then use in the fermentation media to produce yeast, as I've shown you before. But this seaweed also contain a wide range of bioactive components with documented health effects. We're also extracting these directly from the seaweed. This includes fucoidan, lamineran, and other antioxidants. This we then use as functional feed ingredients for both fish and terrestrial animals. We can also take out the protein directly from the seaweed, but this will require a cost-efficient method. And again, here we are using our own enzymes that are tailor-made specifically for this biomass. And microbial ingredients like yeast can be produced from these abundant local resources. And yeast is a high-quality protein source with a protein content of about 50 to 58%. And it has a favorable amino acid profile. Also, the yeast contains a wide range of bioactive components that can have positive effect on health. Yeast also has a low environmental footprint because yeast grow very fast and it can be produced independent on agricultural land, and it uses very little fresh water, and it can be used and produced from non-food biomass. And also it can be used all year round, independent on changing climate condition. And we have tested yeast in a series of different experiments with Atlantic salmon, both in the freshwater and the seawater. And our research shows that fish in general, they eat well and they grow well and they have a high feed efficiency. But the nutritional value of this novel protein source depends on the type of yeast strain, the fermentation condition, and the processing after the yeast is harvested. So these are factors that we're working on optimizing in Foods of Norway. And another important task is to document value-added effects of the yeast, because yeast cannot compete directly with cheap protein sources, such as soy protein concentrate. So we are looking for these value-added effects in terms of additional benefit on health. And yeast do contain a wide range of bioactive components, such as the beta-glucans, mannans, nucleic acid, and natural antioxidants. And our results shows that when feeding yeast-based diets to salmon, you can have several positive effects on the health, which is so important for the total value of the product. And we have also tested this yeast protein in diets for weanling pigs, especially during the critical time of weaning. And we see that the piglets also, they eat well and they grow well, and they also have a healthier gut with less problem with diarrhea. And the third example that I wanted to give you is how we collaborate with breeding companies in both blue and green sectors. And we are developing methods to improve feed efficiency of these animals, so we can produce more fish and meat or even dairy products from our local feed resources. And together with Aquagene, we have developed a new method for direct selection for improved feed efficiency without needing to register individual feed intake in large production systems such as, say, cages. And this has a huge impact on the production efficiency and also the environmental impact on food production. And the potential is huge, because if you look at Norway alone, if you have an increase in feed efficiency of even 1%, the added value creation is more than 300 million crowns a year. And we have shown that this method also works for traditional livestock animals, such as lamb, which is also a model for dairy cows. So that means that the technology we develop in the blue sector is also highly relevant for the green sector. So to conclude, we are developing novel feed solutions and methods for using future genomic breeding program to work towards national food security and to minimize the environmental impact from food production. And I do believe that our model of working across the different sectors and in close collaboration with the industry, it will be a key to success for a bioeconomy in Norway. So with this, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Margaret Øverland. Very interesting presentations from your work at Foods of Norway. I see there are great attention also in the chat, so we will take that up later on, but we will also comment during the webinar. So the next one speaker is Carl Almos. He's special advisor at Sintef Ocean. And today he will tell us about increased export values from Norwegian bio-based value chains. So we look forward to hear from you, Carl.
Thank you. You can hear me and you can see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this webinar. I'm going to say something about a project that actually we did this spring as a contract for the for NHO, Norwegian Industry Association, looking into a roadmap to developmental new industries in Norway. And of course, part of this work was to focus upon the possibility of building up new value chains based upon bio-based industries. So, one moment. Oh, this is really special. I think I have some problem here.
Do you have some small problems?
Yeah, looks like it's not moving forward.
Yes.
You cannot use the small arrows in the left corner of your presentation?
Yes, maybe. Okay, thank you very much. I'll do that.
Okay.
Yes. Well, first of all, we started out in this study looking at what are the natural resources in Norway. And we divided this into, and then we talk about both blue and green resources. And they were divided into three parts, so to say. We have the resources, land-based resources, and also ocean-based resources under national control that we can plan and we can do whatever we want. Then, of course, we have the resources that are in the ocean, but that we cannot actually 100% depend upon in the future. Fish stocks can move and so on. And then we also have outside that 200K economic zone resources that might be available. So we're actually looking at what are the possibilities of utilizing all these resources, but with a focus upon the stationary resources under national control. And the resources that we have today are of course both blue and green, but in fact we have a possibility to expand these bioresources either by harvesting resources that we didn't harvest before, or by cultivating biomass, for instance, in the sea. And then taking these resources and trying to optimize the use in Bio-Refinery, where we actually have on the top the pharmaceutical possibilities, and at the bottom we can burn them as fuel. So when we develop new value chains, we have all these possibilities, but the idea is also to expand the resources available. Then we concluded this blue-green report. We say, well, there are 5 main possibilities for increasing bio-based production in Norway. One is, of course, to be a global supplier of seafood. I'll come back to that. Another one is to expand our production of biomaterials, both from green and blue sector. We can then also develop an industry based upon technological the technology we are developing, both for harvesting, processing, and so on. We can develop new biomarine industries, for instance, by producing seaweed, and we can also somehow develop a new pharmaceutical industry. First of all, I must say that the greatest export potential here is the production of seafood, and it's obvious probably to the audience here that from total production of biomass, 50% is in sea and the other 50% in land. But what you're eating is actually 98% from terrestrial resources if you look at the calorie based situation. But we have three main advantages that we should focus upon when we say we should do more food production in the sea. First of all, of course, we have enough water. That's quite interesting to hear, but that's a major advantage, making food in the ocean. Then, of course, we have Archimedes' law. A fish operating in the water column, of course, can use the buoyancy, so we have a better yield of meat on a fish than on a cow. And then also the temperature, of course, you don't have to run the bioreactor, so to say, like the cow on 37 degrees. You can do it on around 0 degrees. So that's one of the reasons why we should focus here. And also the high-level panel of sustainable ocean economy has actually said that food production in the sea is part of the solution here to climate change. So what is the situation if we divide into green and blue sector? Well, in the green sector, of course, there is a land-based production of biomass. There is national consumption based upon fields available, and also on the blue part, we take pelagic fish and transfer into aquaculture industry to reach the seafood markets, but we are both dependent upon import of soya and also to some extent of fish meal and oil. So this is a situation that we should be able to move out of and try to enclose these circles in other ways than what we're doing today. So this could be another picture where you actually, when I'm referring to the speaker before me, operating in this red square where you look at the bioconversion from terrestrial biomass to feed. And on the other hand, we can also harvest more from other trophical levels in the ocean and also mesopelagic fishes. So all this together should make the possibility for Norway actually to produce the 5 million tons of salmon that we have in our vision and increase the seafood market. And that's the greatest opportunity to increase Norwegian export in the future based upon the biological resources. So this must be the picture in the future. But there are, of course, also other possibilities. For instance, looking into biomaterials, which is today mainly focused upon from the terrestrial side, from the forests and so on. But we also have possibilities in the blue sector that are not used today for polymer production and so on. Cellulose and alginate and even chitin is produced, but there are potentials for increasing these productions and set up new value chains. Then, of course, in Norway, we have a long experience in developing, for instance, the fisheries and aquaculture industry, and we have developed a lot of technology which actually has been an advantage to the Norwegian industry for years. And I think looking into the new enabling technologies and be able to introduce those both in fisheries and aquaculture sector and also in the agriculture and forestry sector, we should be able to develop and expand our industry here. Then talking about new marine industries, of course, that's an interesting area that we have been looking into for many, many years. Seaweed has been utilized in Norway for a long time ago, and in the 1950s, actually, there was set up a production plant for alginate already. So looking into utilization of seaweed, converting this to feed is of course interesting, but the main market today is of course for human consumption. The 30 million metric tons of seaweeds that are produced globally today are mainly going into the human consumption market. We can also cultivate and harvest organisms on a lower trophical level. We, in our institute in SINTEF Ocean, actually with its 350 people there, are also looking into the possibilities here, where we can make habitats. We can look into different ways of actually increasing the primary production. So cultivation and harvest to lower trophical level, I think that will grow as a new industry. Then the mesopelagic fisheries, which you actually find somewhere here between the pelagic and the zooplankton, so to say, is probably the most promising area for expanding the harvest of biomass, also for feed production. And in Norway, we have programs now to develop this, both on basic studies. Actually, in SINTEF, we got a new center of research-based innovation, SFE Harvest, this spring, that will focus very much upon this. So harvesting more from the sea is of course possible. Finally, something also about the biopharmaceutical industry. In Norway, we don't have, well, we have some, but very limited amount of pharmaceutical industry. But we have some marine ingredient production, and we have characterized organisms, for instance, from the sea, that we can use as a basis for pharmaceutical industry. And we should look into again the possibility of a Norwegian pharmaceutical industry, and also mainly based upon bioprospecting of marine organisms. You see from this figure here that new products from marine raw materials has actually a steady increase from the last 50 years. More and more products are based upon bioprospecting and knowledge about marine resources. So trying to conclude here, I would say that the bio-based value chains in Norway, we have listed 5 of them there. In the middle, of course, global supplier of seafood, but also advanced biotechnological industry, production of biomaterials, technology supplier to global food production, and new biomarine industry. Biomarine industry should give new export values to Norway. And we also even try to quantify this. Unfortunately, this is in Norwegian, but we have great expectations that towards 2050, the value creation from the bio-based industries should be 3 or 4 times what it is today, based upon mainly the blue part in the bottom here, which is the Norwegian food production, mainly seafood production. We have the dark blue part, which is the technological development and the supplier industry. We have the green part, which is production of biomaterials. We even see a light blue sector there, establishing new biomarine industries. And if in the long term, we should even be able to set up again some pharmaceutical industry. And we also experience these days during the corona situation that, maybe we should have some pharmaceutical industry by our own. So finally, the export values, which is actually very important, is following more or less the same development as the so in the previous slide here, we have the value development. We have great expectations to the development of the bio-based industries in Norway, and we need that. We have a decline in the oil and gas production and so on, and we think that this will be important in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carl, for inspiring thoughts and insights of your good work at SINTEF Ocean, and also your perspective on this subject. Last one up now is Kjartan Kramer. He's a senior innovation leader at VIS, and today he's going to talk about new feed ingredients and the possibilities within the ocean. I also guess you will touch upon mesopelagic subject, Karsten, so I will just hand over the words to you.
Thank you, Nina. Of course, I will pick up on one of the issues or one of the resources that at least Carl Almos was talking about. I hope you see my screen. Yep.
Yes.
Perfect. I'm working with one of the Norwegian TTOs, or the technology transfer offices, and I'm going to talk about one of the projects that we are running, trying to have all the Norwegian TTOs collaborating on one specific issue, by collaborating actually. So the main point here is collaborating all over Norway to develop a industry actually. So let me start looking at the aquaculture industry in Norway, trying to set up a value chain like you see here on the screen. There is of course lots of bottlenecks that needs to be opened up or solved if you want to grow this industry. And many of those, there are lots of companies and research companies working on those bottlenecks, but we wanted to look for focus on the first one at the beginning of the value chain. There is a need for new raw materials to grow the industry. 5 times the size of the industry means 5 times more raw materials, and those could be either land-based or ocean-based. So let's have a look at this value chain and this one small issue of finding those raw materials. If you combine the expected growth in aquaculture in the whole world, there is a need for more than 30 million tons of additional feed. And where should those come from? I think that you would have a problem if you wanted to source all those raw materials from Brazil or Canada, like soy or rapeseed, those kind of raw materials. I think there is a need for other raw materials, and we are not talking small volumes here. And like the other two have been talking about, there's lots of opportunities in the ocean. Of course, there are still more bycatch and byproducts that you can pick up on. We have algae, and you heard about algae, some of the opportunities. There's also lots of filter feeders like tunicates and bivalves and others, and also microalgae. And in addition, there's one of those small resources that we call mesopelagic fish, and maybe other lower trophic levels as well. And the good thing here is that there's an estimated biomass in the ocean on those mesopelagic species is in the range of 1 billion tons to maybe 10 billion tons. If you compare that with the total fish meal and fish oil production today, which is around 6 million tons, you quickly realize that this is a huge resource. And there's also ongoing initiatives in Norway with at least 3 ship owners and fishing companies working on how to harvest these resources. And SINTEF is deeply involved in this as well. And one of our owners, the Marine Research Institute in Bergen, also are very much interested in this. So what can we do? If you have a look at the value chain here, I think if you're starting in the ocean and fishing this resource, then you quickly realize that someone have to process it as well to get it into the value chain to make feed and then feed it to fish. So what we are doing in this project is trying to speed up the process to test fishing, processing, feed manufacturing, and feeding it to the fish, and even test it out in the market with retail, etc., to check if this is actually something that the whole value chain need or want. And talking to industry and other actors, we get one message, that sustainability and communication around sustainability is the key here. We know that we need more nutritious food, and marine protein and fat is a good solution. It's good for people, and it is actually a sustainable solution, and we can make money out of it. And in Norway, we need a new industry to take over in a way. In the post-oil and gas era, we need 100% sustainable jobs and export value to take over from the oil and gas industry. And as I said, we have this large untapped resource in the ocean. To tap into it, we need regulatory authorities with international cooperation and working with NGOs and certification organizations to make sure that everyone understands that what we're doing is sustainable. So we need some kind of storytelling around this, and we need one message. In the long term, I would guess that everyone would like to develop more large-scale farming of the ocean, using species such as algae and filter feeders. I talked about tunicates and bivalves, etc. One of the bottlenecks in realizing such potential is actually in the middle of the value chain here, and that's where we are focusing at the moment. As I said, a fishing boat going out to sea needs someone to take care of the material when it gets back into land. We are talking about large volumes here, so who's going to take care of that? We know that, for instance, the mesopelagic species are very difficult to handle after they've been fished. It behaves more like liquid than fish after a few hours, actually. So there's a need to build a large bio-refinery industry here. We are talking about millions of tons. So that's where we are focusing at the moment. But by doing that, we can also, let's say, start with the fish meal and fish oil industry and refurbish that industry to take care of large volumes of a new resource. And at the same time, trying to make more products. So by handling a more diverse resource base and also being able to make more products, it could be a very nice opportunity for building a new industry in Norway. And in the long term, well, let's start with the mesopelagic fish. And then in the long run, we should work more with farmed solutions, meaning all those species that we can farm in a stationary way. Okay, so what's happening right now? And this is something where SINTEF also is involved. But with this project I'm talking about, we are trying to speed up the process to make sure we can test mesopelagic species, or in this case, it's actually pearlside, one specific species that can be fished right outside Norway. So we are trying to speed up the process and create what I'm here calling a fast-track consortium to take care of pearlside whenever it's possible to go out fishing, and setting up a test rig, so to speak, with companies that handle all of this as transactions more than a very rigid consortium. So whenever the Ligruppen, whenever they are ready to go out fishing in November, they will do so. And we have an agreement with Pelagia, in this case, to take care of the resource, process it, and solve the issues that they will discover, because we know there are issues when we have such resources coming in. And they will sell the product to a feed manufacturer, in this case Cargill, and they will do all the tests they need to make sure that this is all safe. And then the next two levels is not 100% clear, but there will be a farming company picking up on the feed being made by Cargill, partly by using mesopelagic fish meal and oil fished by the Ligruppen. And in the end, we want to test it with the customer, meaning retail and a real customer. What do they think about all this? In addition, of course, there's need for entrepreneurs to solve some of the issues, for instance, in the ocean. And trawling, spend a lot of energy on the trawling itself. And there are lots of other bottlenecks that needs to be solved. So this is just a very small start. And to support all of this development, of course, we need regulatory authorities to support. And they're already doing that. And there's at the moment 2 companies that have the permission to fish in the ocean. And we need R&D to solve all the bottlenecks. And we need the NGOs and certifications organizations like MSC, etc., to support the development. And all this is happening as we speak. And we hope that this will really be a part of speeding up the process of developing a huge new industry in Norway and other countries to support aquaculture in general. So to summarize, this is my last slide. This is something we are doing as a collaboration between all the TTOs in Norway. We work together, and at the same time we are developing methods and tools to collaborate better with industry and all the R&D organizations in Norway and in the rest of Europe, actually. And the best way to do this is to have a value chain approach and do most of the work more or less in parallel and engage industries and all other stakeholders as needed to speed up the development and make a big change in the whole industry. And as I said, as a pilot, we are testing if this is working, that we can actually collaborate in a better way by trying to speed up the development of using mesopelagic species in the value chain of fish farming. So that ends up my presentation.
Thank you, Kjartan, for sharing good thoughts with us today. We have run through really exciting topics today, and we see that there have been a lot of interaction also during the webinar in the chat. But I would like to sum up a little bit and ask you to answer a little bit of the question that has been flowing around during the webinar here. So Margrethe Øverland, you answered some of the question that was coming up. But I just want to ask you about, you talked briefly in the comments here about your other project that was oil for feed. Could you draw some parallels to what we are talking about here today in that project?
Yes, that's true. We are, of course, working with yeast as a protein source, but we just got another project from the Research Council, which is called Oil for Feed. We are then using byproducts from the slaughter industry. In this case, we're using fat as a byproduct, which we have a lot of here in Norway. That is totally underutilized. We're using this then to ferment oleaginous yeast. Then we can then use in aqua feeds. Along with that, we are also working on microalgae that can also grow on these side streams, sugars from spruce trees, as well as these byproducts from the slaughter industry. So we're then producing microalgae as an alternative omega-3 source in aqua feeds. So those are parallel projects going on. So we're constantly looking into how can we use all these different side streams because this is so important for the circular economy and how we can also solve this issue about getting enough feed for the expanding aquaculture industry. So yeah, those are activities that are ongoing.
Thank you so much. Very interesting what you are doing in all kind of projects here. Thank you for sharing. Also, Carl, you talked about the increase of export values from Norwegian bio-based value chains. And during your presentation, you touched upon the value chain and the different stakeholders and challenges by political condition, global market, competent capital technology, and bioresources. What do you feel or see from your point of view would be the main challenge in this area with new biomarine industry? Sound, please.
Yes. Well, I think your question is a big question. We can certainly discuss all those matters and come up with something. But what I would say, I've just finished a study in SINTEF where we actually have evaluated 23 different possible Norwegian raw materials for feed production. And we ended up with 6 or 7 of them are realistic to start out with. And I think that the limitation, actually the main bottleneck, I think, is to give the industry taking the risk for scaling up, for doing the pilot work here, being able to reduce the risk for them. For instance, if we want to develop the mesopelagic sector, which is crucial for future feed production, it should be possible for the owners of the fishing vessels to get the right conditions so they can take part in this project, so we can scale this up. I think that's one very concrete point. I think when it comes to the infrastructure for scaling up, doing pilot studies, I think we in Norway we have a lot of infrastructure in NMBU, in Bergen, in Trondheim, in Tromsø, and all over. So we are not in lack of infrastructure. So I think there are political and also to some extent regulatory aspects that represent bottlenecks, because when you develop these new possibilities, you always run your head into the wall because there are some regulations that are from the past and are not in the forefront of developing these regulations for the future, the moment. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's a really good way of saying it, and definitely something that I think is one of the challenges to succeed. And I guess, Kjartan, you are also agreeing on to reduce risk for the industry by achieving these goals of how we can use new raw materials in feed ingredients. Do you want to add some additional comments to that?
Well, I like what you said about regulatory issues, for instance. You need to make sure that the fishing companies can actually fish a certain volume so they can at least cover some of the costs they have with the exploration. Probably going 1 month to sea will cost around 2 million NOK. So if you are fishing nothing or very little, it's not good for business. And at the moment, those companies, they have other species where they can earn a decent amount of money. So why should they tap into this resource if there's a huge risk? So I really agree what you said. We need to take away that, or some of the cost of the risk, to put it that way.
Thank you. We are gonna go through a landing here. We have some additional information, but first I want some of the main goals in this series of webinar and in this project, Land Meet Ocean, is to go down and select concrete business ideas that go cross-sectoral in regarding to innovations between land and ocean. From the topics that we are touch upon today, shortly, Margaret, what do you think will be one of the easy or good ways to topics to address in this project going further?
Well, the regulatory constraints was mentioned as a common problem. One thing is fisheries, but the other one is, of course, how can we use the seaweed? There's so many regulatory constraints that needs to be looked up once more with new eyes, in a sense. We have the iodine issue, we have the arsenic issue, we have many issues that limits the use of this biomass with a lot of potential. So that is definitely an area. But as far as innovation in the future, we need a lot of these different efforts to really solve the problem, because when we're talking alternative protein sources, you need large volumes to meet the demand for the industry. So we have touched on many different areas here, which I think will be important. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And with us, we have also Maria Halsengren today. She is partner in EY. Maria, you have followed this project and led us through. What do you think would be a good sum up for the first step of this project?
You're muted, Maria.
Important point. Thank you. We have met and seen a lot of exciting both research and work on new value chains. And as we see, as we are depleting the world's resource base, we are greatly in need of new circular business models, and we need to use all the sources for protein and carbohydrates and oils, and especially omega-3 oils, as we could find. So here today, as in the other seminars, we have seen a lot of ideas of how do we use byproducts, how do we use waste, and how do we use new biotech, synthetic biotech, to create new resources from other resources. So we're hoping that we will select some of these really innovative concepts and keep working with you partners and participants across sectors to work on how could we create new industries and new clusters around these new ideas. And we have seen a lot of new ideas, and we'll invite you all to contribute with our expert survey. And please contribute with your views on megatrends, your views of obstacles to innovation, and where you are interested in participating in innovation processes. So as you have seen, there's a lot of innovation and a lot of work going on and a lot of things to solve and questions to solve. So we want to thank you all for your contributions, and please stay in touch with us in the continuation of this year's innovation process.
Thank you, Maria. And just to sum up what we've been doing now, we've been through the 4 webinars highlighting different cross-sector innovation ideas and opportunities, and kind of getting into the different areas by looking at it in a circular perspective between land and ocean. After this webinar, we're gonna now send out a quest back for you, where you will be asked to give us some feedback, but also to contribute to different ideas and partnership that we could work through during this poll. In October, November, we're gonna host an innovation process workstream workshop, where we get into the details and see how we could involve and develop these ideas further. And in November, we will then give a presentation and sum up the projects, and hopefully getting some step closer to what we can see between land meet ocean and in a circular perspective, doing cross-sector innovation in these industries. So thank you so much on behalf of the partners today, and we wish you to fill out and interact by the quest back, and we will let you know when we are ready for the next step of the project. Thank you.